So let's talk about prosperity. There's yes. There's really two elements to prosperity. The first is abundance. Now, abundance can then be subdivided into abundance that is just there that you can experience, and abundance that you choose to possess or you desire to possess. So let me give you an example. This morning, Dorian and I woke up in a hotel in Pismo Beach. We were up there for a weekend event, and we left up there and to drive down. Mandatory stop at Starbucks, of course, to pick up some abundance that we wanted to possess. And then we're driving down the 101, and it's just beautiful. It just was that we started out in the real heavy fog, the marine layer up there, and it was about 42 degrees. And then as we moved inland, it got sunny gradually, and it was just it's such a beautiful place, that part of California, as you're driving down through that central coast. And you've got the beautiful trees and the hills, and the sky was just gorgeous. And that's an abundance. It's an abundance of beauty that's there. Of course, it's everywhere, but just to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to take a moment and appreciate this. I'm going to look at it, I'm going to experience it, I'm going to think about it, I'm going to feel it. And the ability to possess that abundance is a form of prosperity, because prosperity is having whatever you need to feel free, to feel fulfilled. So that's a type of abundance you can just kind of experience. And at the same time, there was this other really interesting thing going on, because Dorian, for a thing connected to her work, needed to be on a conference call that involved both a cell phone and a laptop as we drove. So recently I got one of these little things, it's called a hotspot. And it has a cell phone connection, and you can connect up to 10 devices to it on Wi-Fi wherever you are. So we're driving down the road, and we have a cellular hotspot in the car, and she's working on her laptop and getting on the internet to connect with this call. And there were about a few hundred people on the call, and they were from 5 continents in real time doing this experience. And they broke up into small. She's still on it. In fact, it goes till 11:30. But I'm thinking, well, I'm looking at this natural beauty as we drive down the road, enjoying that, and then here's this technical marvel going on beside me. I mean, it's a big deal to be able to talk on a cell phone in your car, and now what's the next step, And that's abundance, an abundance of possibility, an abundance of, what technology can do for us is open up to greater abundance. So let's talk about money in relation to these two concepts, because abundance and prosperity don't have to involve money, but money's a good thing to talk about, because of all the facilitating energies in the world, money is the easiest to measure. It's got numbers on it. Right? You know what it is. You know how much money you have, or you could sit down and figure it out. Some of you would take longer to do that than others. Some of us can do it in our head, but So if we look at metaphysically, we would look at money as a facilitating energy. It's a facilitating energy, kind of like nutrition or food is a facilitating energy for you to experience your life physically and be in good health. Well, money is a facilitating energy for you to acquire abundance that you want to possess. You see? Now, when you want to possess abundance, it's different than just experiencing abundance. See, I didn't have to take care of any of the property we drove through on our way down here. I could just appreciate it. I mean, I pay some taxes for the roads and things like that, but I didn't want to be attached to any of that property, to be honest with you. Because you think about it, if you bought that hillside's beautiful, I think I'll buy it. Well, that's a commitment, right? Then you've got to put fences up, and you've got to maintain it, and whatever else has to be done. See? And there are things you want to do that with. There are things that you're passionate about. There are things that you enjoy, or things that you require to live your life. And in that case, you might make a choice to possess something out of the realm of abundance. But there is a cost to everything you choose to possess. You have to generate the facilitating energies involved in possessing it and maintaining it. It might include the money to buy something. It might include, working on something and so forth. we were up at a festival in Paso Robles this past couple days, and it's called the Garagiste Festivals, and it's small producers of wine. Now, wine is one of my secondary passions. I really enjoy it. We make wine. We love to. It's really kind of an interesting thing. And when you go to this event, there's workshops and other things, but then they have this tasting for about 60 wineries that are usually brand new. You have to produce less than 1,500 cases, which isn't much in the wine world, to be in this tasting. And the people you go around and talk to, and they're in a big horse stable on this farm, this big 600-acre farm up there in Paso Robles. And there's this beautiful horse barn. It's all brick. It's just gorgeous. I mean, it's nicer than my house. And it is. And in each of the stalls, there's 3 or 4 wineries set up on tables and everything, and they're bringing their wares that they have created. And every one of these folks, probably none of them are making money doing what they're doing. In fact, most people in the wine business don't make money. It costs them money to produce wine, and they do it because it's a passion. And some of the people there, they actually grow the grapes themselves, and others source grapes, which means they buy from other growers and they blend the wines. And there's lots of different ways to approach it. But it's really interesting to talk to people who are passionate about something. They're pouring the wine, it's all, you pay an admission fee, but they can't sell any wine there. So they're just there to share what they're doing, and they love to talk about it. And there's really a neat energy when you're around anything like that, where people are really passionate about what they're doing. There's an abundance there. Now, if you decide you want to go into the wine business to make money, then you have a whole different approach. See, when money becomes the desired outcome, I'm doing this for the money, rather than I'm doing something I'm passionate about and I need to produce money as an enabling energy, there's a whole different feeling to it. Because what a lot of people do, we need money. Money is something we can't do without. We live in an economic, commerce-driven culture, right? So you got to have money. As Woody Allen says, money is better than poverty, at least in an economic sense. So, we need to have money. But sometimes what we do is, well, I need to have money, so I do something that I don't have any feeling for or any passion for. In fact, I might do something I really dislike in order to get money. And then what ends up happening is, quite often with people that do that, is they end up getting enough money to sustain making the money doing what they don't like. The money doesn't become an enabling energy anymore. It becomes an energy to stay in a cycle of unhappiness. They say there was a study done recently about people feeling engaged at work. And the way they designed the study was kind of interesting. But one of the things that the study showed was 84% of Americans are in the wrong job in terms of what their true passion or talent would be. We kind of land, quite often we make a decision on landing somewhere where I can make the most money, or where I need money, I'll do anything. And so many of us get into that position, it's no wonder a lot of people don't like their work. So your feelings about money have a lot to do with how you experience life in a culture like ours. We might say, well, gee, it's too bad we need all this, I need to have money to live, but there aren't a lot of alternatives. But on the other hand, you can look at, how am I prioritizing things? Do I even know what I'm passionate about? Do I even know what I really love to do, or what my creative talents would lead me toward? And am I using in any way my money to facilitate that? I have a couple of passions. I have a passion about this teaching and teaching this teaching, and I have a passion about travel. Those are probably my two main passions, plus family. I'm not passionate enough to live with all of them, but I really care about them. But, in terms of, what do I really love to do? Well, I love to do what I'm doing now. I love to teach classes. I love to do all that stuff, and I love to travel. You may have noticed, right? So, and I got clear over the years, because I didn't used to be clear about this, but I got clear over the years that I needed to know what my values are, what my passions are, what my purpose is, so that I can design my life to support that. And it doesn't mean I'm necessarily making money at my passion. But what it means is, if I'm not making money at my passion, I'm making money in a way that helps to fulfill my passion. You know, in the Joseph Campbell Companion, Joseph talks about his wife, whose name just flew completely out of my head, Jean Erdman, thank you, who was a choreographer, and she ended up working with Martha Graham, one of the top choreographers on the planet eventually. But when she was younger, she was a dancer, and in order to be a dancer at that level, she had to rehearse 6 hours a day. And they didn't get paid for that. And she had to rehearse at a time when there was rehearsal studio and coaches and things like that. So that being her passion, she would get jobs to make enough money to eat and have a place to live, but the jobs had to not interfere with that 6 hours. And she said over time, most of the dancers dropped out because they were offered a promotion that would require they work during that time or something like that. He said over the course of a few years, most of the people she started with were gone because they decided the money was more important. See? And she didn't decide that. She stuck with that, and she ended up having a great career in that which was her passion. Now, it's hard to make those decisions. It's hard to turn down a promotion. It's hard to turn down a better paying job. Because most of our conditioning is you need to get as much as you can, you know, in order to not only survive, but to be able to do what you want. But if I have enough to do what I want, but I'm not able to do my passion, where am I? Dr. Holmes says prosperity is the outpicturing of substance in our affairs. Everything in the universe is for us. Nothing is against us. And by substance, he simply means substance is sort of the physical manifestation of divine potential. So substance exists both in the manifest world and in the unmanifest world. In the unmanifest world, it exists as what we would call potential. So you have potential you haven't actualized, right? So your consciousness is the vehicle through which it actualizes. And if your consciousness expands into a greater idea of yourself, more of your potential gets actualized. If it doesn't, then that additional potential stays as potential. So what a lot of us do, see, the problem is, and our culture really encourages us to do this, is limit down what we'll see as possible. Don't be a dreamer. Be practical. Right? Now, you need to be practical. But if you're really, really, really practical, you're probably going to end up following someone else's advice about how to live your life. Because if you're not following my advice, I don't think you're being practical. If I'm the culture around you and I'm telling you what to do and you don't do it, you're obviously being impractical. Here the culture is imparting its greatest wisdom, you know. And there is some wisdom in that. But then you look around and you look at most of the culture, and most of the culture are people that aren't happy. They're not living their passion. They're dragging themselves to jobs they don't like to make money to pay for the apartment that they're never in because they're always at work. Or pay to the car. You know, how much of your income goes into facilitating you being at work? Is another way to look at it. You know, how much of your energy goes into facilitating you being at work as opposed to facilitating, and maybe your work is your passion, in which case that's really good. That's called alignment. But a lot of people don't have alignment. They work at something they don't like, and then on the weekends they try to find a passion, whatever that might be. Emily Cady was one of the original New Thought teachers way back in the day, and she was quite a character. But she said one of the unerring truths in the universe is that there is already provided a lavish abundance for every human want. In other words, the supply of every good always awaits the demand. Another truth is that the demand must be made before the supply can come forth to fill it. So here we're talking about the process, the creative process through the individual or as the individual. I have to make a demand on the universe within my consciousness in order for that demand to be filled. But if I don't think something's possible, I probably won't make a demand on it. If I don't think something's possible, what I do is I fantasize about it. And when you're fantasizing about things, what you're doing, part of that component of fantasy is, this isn't possible. But boy, if it was, see? So the necessary link to bring it into manifest form from the potential isn't there. And the other problem with fantasy is, it's a way of putting yourself down. Well, I'd love to have that, but I could never have that. You know, I could have been driving down the 110 feeling really depressed that I couldn't afford to buy land along it. That would have been one way to spend my morning. Fortunately, I don't want land along it. But, you know, you ever look at something really nice that you'd like to have and then you kind of get a sense of envy or a sense of, oh, I could never have that. See? Where'd that come from? Well, somebody taught it to you, probably as you were growing up, because they didn't want you to have excessive expectations. They wanted you to be realistic about what was possible in this limited world. So what she says here, is there is already provided a lavish abundance for every human want. She doesn't qualify that. She doesn't say except for what you want, or except for your big idea, or except for something you can't quite figure out how to get. Every human want. A lavish abundance. In other words, the supply of every good always awaits the demand. Just sitting there waiting. So you might think of the universe of potentiality, which is just this huge, non-manifest thing, has a bias toward expressing. It's kind of leaning in, but it can't express until there's a consciousness through which it can express. And that consciousness through which it can express must be a consciousness that makes a demand on a lawful universe. Not a, gee, it would be nice to, but a, this is mine and I claim it now. One of Katie's contemporaries, Emma Curtis Hopkins, had her catchphrase was, there is good for me and I ought to have it. There is good for me and I ought to have it. Not it would be nice if I had it, maybe somebody will give it to me, but I ought to have it. Your money story determines what you earn, how you live, and the impact you can make in life. David, what is your money story? And it probably has changed over time. You know, is my money story there's always enough? Or is my money story there's never enough? Is my money, you know, we've all got one, right? Every time I get this close to success, it all falls apart. You know, the system's rigged. You can't get into it unless you already know somebody or you're born into it. We have our excuses, right? We've developed the great American novel unexpressed in most of us about why life works or why it doesn't. And then we live that story. And we say, see, this was true. Now, some people have a great money story. They have an empowering money story. They have a story that money's no big deal. If I want it, I get it. They understand it. They understand it as an energy. Others see it as something that is impossible to figure out or requires expert knowledge to attain. Or you're waiting for that lottery ticket to win. And you've put so what's the problem with lottery tickets? Nothing. Matter of fact, you can't win the lottery if you don't buy one, I hear. But you do subject yourself to the law of averages. See, the law of averages say that for those numbers to come up, there's a 1 in whatever so many million chance. And you're subject to that. Well, if I have the consciousness, doesn't that rearrange the odds? No, it doesn't. Sorry. The universe isn't magic. The universe operates by law. And the more you know about the law, the more you can use it to your advantage. But if I think the law is magical, then what I'm saying is I'm stepping back from an effective use of the law. Well, I know somebody that won and they didn't have a very good consciousness. Doesn't that prove the point? See? Consciousness would say I amassed that much without the lottery. See? Well, that would be really hard. What's your story about money? Does it come easily or is it hard to get? Is there plenty of it or is there not enough? And it's important that we understand what our current story about money is. And if you don't like that story, you can rewrite it. Yeah, you can. Most of us don't make demands on the universe. We ask the universe without really expecting a reply. We're hoping for a reply. But the problem with hope is always dependent on something outside of you. You know? I hope I get rich. That implies that someone else is going to have to do it for you. You know? You might fantasize about the relative you haven't met yet that's leaving you millions of dollars. Or that one of your Facebook posts will go viral and you'll start a giant career in entertainment. But see, that fantasy thinking is always, probably not. That's not a demand on a lawful universe. Hope doesn't demand. So hope has to be replaced by a sense of certainty of understanding what you're working with. And again, we talk about what does it take to do that? Well, it takes the same amount of faith that it takes when you do what? When you walk in the room and you flip on the light switch, do you expect the light to go on? Are you surprised if it doesn't? Okay, that's how much faith you need to get wealthy. You'd be surprised if it doesn't happen, not if it does. That's the consciousness that we need to create in every area of life to have prosperity. Prosperity is the freedom to make choices. You need good health to be able to make choices. You need good relationships to be able to make choices. And you need money to be able to make choices. All of those things are enabling energies to living a life of spiritual freedom. See, when there's a problem, the issue is something's blocking the flow. This is a little beaver dam. It's blocking, see a lot of water piled up behind it and just a trickle coming through. So you think of that beaver dam as a limited consciousness, a limited idea of self in mind. And although all the water is piled up behind it, all the potential is piled up behind it, it can't get through. Because my mind, your mind, is the portal through which it has to express. And if my mind is shut down to the point that says life really sucks and then you die, and what happens to happen? That's a demand on the universe. And the universe says, right you are, to whatever you demand. And to whatever you fantasize, it ignores, because there's no power in it. It ignores what you don't expect. Somebody's crying. Hope that's not something I said. Something blocking the flow. So is your mind like a thicket of stuff that's keeping the good from flowing through? Because, and by the way, every stick in there, if that's your mind, you justified when you put it there. This is so. I got some real good advice. It's hard to make a living. And I put a whole bunch of sticks in about that because all my, when I was a kid, that's all I heard in my environment. We had nobody in our family. I didn't know anybody that ran their own business except the guy next door who was a carpenter. And he would build one house at a time. And he was very happy, But what I heard from my dad and my male relatives was it's a rat race out there. It's tough to make a living. And anybody that really has a lot of money is suspect. Although they all wanted a lot of money. They all wanted to be suspect, I guess. But they didn't have the consciousness to be suspect. And I'm sure that's what they were told growing up, see? You were probably misinformed by people that were misinformed. So it's not about getting angry at them or anything. It's just, well, they're doing the best. They gave you the best advice they could. They gave you advice they thought was true. It just wasn't. But how much of that, is buried in here? How much of my old story have I just been... See, the problem is once I get the belief, I create the world to match the belief, and then I get reinforced. And there's a couple of things that can knock me out of that. One can be like a big cathartic experience. Like, you have one of those world collapsing experiences. Maybe you get very ill, or you have a bankruptcy, or you have a divorce, or something like that, and all of a sudden you wake up a little bit. And you have an opportunity to take a different direction. The other is to do day-by-day corrective thinking. To recognize that, I'm living a limited life because I have a limited idea of what's possible. I need to expand that idea. I want to apply myself to do that and see what happens. Because I want to be the person who expects the good and is surprised when it doesn't occur. Because what happens to those people is the good keeps occurring. It's very simple. The law of circulation is something else we talk about. The law of circulation says kind of what goes around comes around. That everything is expressing through you according to your consciousness. Your consciousness is a filtering system that takes it out into the world. And everybody perceives it according to their own consciousness. We're creating it. And in order to be in the law of circulation, I have to be circulating. I have to be putting myself out there. I have to be getting involved. Engaging in life in whatever area that I feel stuck. Maybe I need to talk to people that know how to make money. Or maybe I need to talk to people that know how to have the money follow their passion. Harv Eker says, what I heard about money isn't necessarily true. I choose to adopt new ways of thinking that support my success. We have to begin with the idea that what I know may not be so. And how I can tell it's not so is it leads to difficulty, it leads to suffering, it leads to less than. But then I have to replace that with something that is so. And what is so is usually a more open-ended idea about possibility. We don't want to get off into magical thinking. We still have to have that practical side. I have to work within and around the law of averages. Buying 200 lottery tickets and 138 million to 1 doesn't really increase your odds that much. I remember back when the lottery first started in Florida. At that time, I don't know how many numbers it was, but it was, if you got all the numbers, you got, 1 million. It started at $1 million, usually went up to 7, 10, 15 million. And there was a 1 in 13 million chance of winning. And people would say, well, that doesn't sound so bad. And I'd say, okay, imagine a racetrack. And there's 13 million horses in the starting gate, and you have one of them. How confident are you going to be Now the Powerball's like 130 million to 1, 400 million to 1. That's how much money. I think it's the odds are 138 million, I think. Okay, imagine a racetrack with 138 million horses. And you've got one of them. Or 200. Go crazy, splurge. What are the odds? And I'm not saying don't buy a lottery ticket. Maybe it's, but don't buy it. Don't make it your retirement plan. You know? When you go to see your financial advisor, say, well, what have you got worked out? Well, I'm very heavily into the lottery. And I'm hoping for unknown relatives to leave me lots of money. Sounds like a plan, huh? It's probably the most popular plan in America. Eric Butterworth, the great Unity teacher, said, remember, prosperity is a way of living and thinking, not just about money or things. And poverty is a way of living and thinking, and not just about money or things. They both reflect a consciousness. See? So you might say, well, you know, what should we do? What should I do when I'm walking down the street and there's a homeless person? Should I give him any money? It's up to you. It's not going to change the universe. Do what feels right. You see? You might say, well, why doesn't that homeless person have the consciousness to get a home? I don't know. Why don't you have the consciousness to get a better home? Maybe it's the same thing. See? We're all where we are by right of consciousness. And that consciousness was built by what we heard, what we experienced, and how we interpreted that. And there's a whole lot of really bad advice out there. There's a whole lot of really limited thinking out there and limited beliefs that are getting passed on with great urgency. Right? And now we have social media, so it can get passed on 12,000 times faster. And I'm not saying don't pay attention to anything. I'm saying be clear that you are in dominion of your mind. And you are. You can't give that up. But you can be a very unwise ruler. See? The idea is to be the good king, the good queen, the one that elevates the kingdom, the one that creates the greater opportunity, the one that refuses to live in lack or limitation, the one that refuses to live an unexpressed life. But the one who is willing to do the inner work to make sure that what is expressed is authentic and true. See, a lot of people, you say, just be your authentic self, and all this anger and rage comes out. Well, that's not their authentic self. That's a surface level anger and resentment that gets built up. The authentic self has been effectively buried by that. If your authentic self expresses anything other than love, it's not your authentic self. So we have to dig down to find it. Butterworth says there's only one way by which you can achieve prosperity. It's to change your mind. Because even if you don't change your mind, even if somebody dumps a load of money in your driveway, if you have a limited consciousness, you'll find a way to get rid of it. Did you ever get extra money? Did it change your life? No, you probably went to the mall. You got a nicer TV. Right? Because that's what we tend to do. If we get too much beyond what our consciousness says is ours, we find a way to get rid of it. I had a TV before, and now I have a big TV. But has my life changed? No, I just still got a TV. I didn't know all this stuff was. What can I give right now? What has that got to do with anything? The way it works is, the Bible had this one right, as you give, so shall you receive. That sucks, I know, because we want to wait until we receive so we can give out of comfort. See? So I'm going to wait. When I have a whole lot, I'm going to be so generous. And that's the way most people think, you know. I really want to be generous, but I don't have a lot. I have to, I don't have enough for me. So what will happen is I'm going to wait until I get a whole lot, and I'm buying a lottery ticket. I'm looking for that relative I never heard of who somehow has been following me through my whole life, waiting to bestow a king's ransom on me. Or maybe I'll luck out and get a hot cup of coffee and I'll be able to sue somebody. Wouldn't that be cool? There was a cartoon in the New Yorker a couple weeks ago. It was two down and out guys sitting on a stoop. And one says to the other one, I'm really hoping that I can get a consumer products lawsuit to go in my favor very soon. That was his plan moving forward, to find a defective product that would injure him. Because that seemed like a good way to get money. Now, in order for you to think that way, what also do you have to think? I'm hopeless. Right? So what can I give right now? Edwene Gaines, remember Edwene was here not too long ago, and she said, whenever you're suffering in any area of your life, if you want to heal it, give from that area. So I give before I receive. How's that work? Right? Well, you don't give more than you have. You can't. So tithing is an option. Tithing is where you give a percentage of whatever it is. People say, well, I'll tithe when I have a lot, right? That's like saying I'm gonna go to the gym when I'm in shape. I want to look good when I get there and everything, so I'm just waiting to get in shape, and as soon as I do get in shape, I'm going to the gym. And you see, you laugh, right? But you didn't laugh when I said I'll tithe. See? Consciousness tells. We live in a universe that is lawful. And the laws aren't written down anywhere. But they work in accordance to giving and receiving. And the universe works in terms of cooperation. You breathe in oxygen, you breathe out carbon dioxide. The trees outside do the opposite. That's cooperation. Allows us both to thrive. You see? None of us thrives unless all of us thrive, or unless all of us have an opportunity to thrive anyway. And you can't save the world, but you can be an example of a life well lived. That would save the world. What if you had more people in your life when you were a kid that were examples of a life well lived? That you could look at and say, man, they're living their dream. They're living their passion. Don't have anything grand or grandiose. It just has to be the kind of thing like those folks up there with their little couple cases of wine that they were so proud of. And that they had to work in other jobs to support. But they had something in their life they were passionate about that they were doing. That's what prosperity is. Prosperity is life is not drudgery. Life is a great gift and a great joy. And when I recognize that, and I do the work to find out what is my passion, what is my purpose, and I do work toward that, it happens. Because I grow my acceptance of what I can say yes to. And I get rid of the sticks in the dam, maybe one stick at a time. And eventually, the whole dam gives away. Because a few sticks can't hold it up. And then you get a flood of good in your life. And then the next lesson is how to deal with the flood of good when it shows up. Because a lot of people go, oh my God, I got all this good. I don't know how long can this last, But that's a good problem to have. Let's work on that problem of getting the good to flood into my life, to say yes to it, to be okay with it, not to make it conditional on anybody else's approval or anybody else's condition. And I begin by saying yes to that idea. So my good shows up, and I'm surprised if it doesn't. Let's just say that together. My good shows up, and I'm surprised if it doesn't. Namaste.